The suitcase was still zipped when he set it down by my feet that he didn't unpack it. He didn't even bring it inside. He just left it in the hallway of Meadowbrook Care Center, kissed the top of my head like I was a child he was dropping off at school, and said, "I'll call you Sunday." That was a Tuesday in October. I remember because the leaves outside were the color of rust, and I remember thinking, he'll call Sunday that he didn't call that Sunday. Or the one after. 10 years passed before I saw his face again. And when he finally walked back through those doors, he wasn't there to take me home. He sat down across from me, folded his hands the way he used to when he was in trouble as a boy, and said, "Dad, I need to ask you something. I want to tell you what that something was. But I need to tell you how I got there first, not from the beginning of my life, just from that hallway, and everything that came after. If you've ever been left behind by someone you loved, stay with me. I think you'll understand this more than you'd like to." The room they gave me was 114. Single bed, a window that looked out on a parking lot, a roommate named Walter who snored like a diesel engine and talked about his late wife, every single day like she just stepped out for milk. I kept waiting for the phone at the front desk to have a message for me. A nurse named Priya used to check for me without me even asking. After a while she stopped checking. Not because she gave up on me. Because she already knew that I told myself there was a reason. My son wasn't cruel. He'd never been cruel a day in his life. He was 38 years old, married, a daughter in middle school, a job that had him traveling more than he was ever home. I told myself he was just buried. Busy. That kind of busy that swallows a man whole, but busy doesn't explain 10 years. Somewhere around year 2, the checks started. Not from him, from an account I didn't recognize, paying down whatever the facility billed that Medicaid didn't cover. Every month, like clockwork. No note. No name I could trace. I asked the billing office who it was and they told me it wasn't their place to say that. I used to lie in bed at night and think, maybe that's him. Maybe that's his way of loving me from a distance, then I'd think, or maybe it's guilt. And those aren't the same thing. Year 3, a woman came to visit Walter. Not his family, he didn't have any left. She said she used to work with my son, years back, at the dealership he'd managed outside of Dayton before he moved on, she said, in a voice that made the words sound like they had quotation marks around them. Moved on to where? I asked her. She looked at me like I'd asked something she wasn't allowed to answer. You'd have to ask him that, she said, and changed the subject that I didn't get her name. I've regretted that more than almost anything else from those years. By year 5, I'd stopped setting a place for him in my mind on holidays. Walter and I would sit in the common room on Thanksgiving with paper plates of dry turkey, and he'd tell me about it, and I'd nod, and somewhere in the back of my head I'd think, at least he has someone to remember. I have someone to wait for. I don't know which is worse. That was the year I found the envelope. It came addressed to me, no return address, postmarked Cincinnati. Inside was a newspaper clipping, folded into fourths, soft at the creases like it had been carried around a long time before someone finally mailed it. A short article. Local. A woman named Grace Halloran, 26 years old, had been struck by a vehicle on Route 4 outside of Dayton 11 years earlier. Driver never identified. Case still open. I didn't understand why anyone would send that to me. I put it in the drawer of my nightstand and didn't look at it again for a long time. That I should have looked at it sooner. Year 7, my son's wife came. Not him. Her name was Renee, and I hadn't seen her since the day he dropped me off. She sat in the chair by my bed and cried before she said a single word. He doesn't know I'm here, she told me. Is he all right? I don't know any more, she said. He doesn't sleep. He won't talk about his father, his real father, I mean, not you, I mean the man who, she stopped herself. What man? She shook her head like she'd already said too much. He loves you, she said instead. I need you to know that, whatever happens. He loves you and he hates himself, and I don't know how to fix either one. I asked her to explain. She wouldn't. She hugged me longer than I expected, and left, and I didn't hear from her again either. Somewhere in there, Walter passed. Quietly, in his sleep, the way he always said he wanted to. I sat with him the night before, and he asked me, the way he asked me most nights, whether I thought I was waiting on him. I think so, I told him. You think your boys out there thinking about you the same way? I didn't answer that one. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't have broken both of us. After Walter, they moved a younger man into 114. Didn't stay long. Then it was empty a while. I got used to being alone in a room built for 2. Year 9, a man in a gray suit came asking questions. Not about me, about my son. He said he was a private investigator, hired by a family, and he wanted to know if I had any documents relating to an accident on Route 4, 11, now 12, years back. Why are you asking me? I said. I wasn't there. Somebody was, he said. Somebody who was never charged. He left a card. I put it with the newspaper clipping in the drawer and didn't sleep that night, or several after. I started putting pieces together I didn't want to put together. A son who vanished the same year that article was published. Checks from an account I couldn't trace, paid faithfully, like a man trying to buy down a debt he'd never say out loud. A wife who cried and wouldn't finish her sentences. A private investigator asking about a hit and run outside the town where my son used to work that I told myself I was building a story out of nothing. Old men do that. We sit alone too long and we start writing movies in our heads to fill the silence, but some part of me already knew the shape of it, even before I had the words. 10 years to the month after he left that suitcase in the hallway, my son walked back through the doors of Meadowbrook Care Center. He looked older in a way that had nothing to do with age. Grayer at the temples, thinner, like something had been eating at him from the inside for a decade and finally started to show on the outside. He sat down across from me in the common room. Folded his hands the way he used to when he was a boy caught in something. Dad, he said. I need to ask you something. 10 years, I said. That's a long time to wait to ask a question. He looked at the floor. I let the silence sit there, because I'd learned, in that building, that silence tells you more than most people's words ever will. Do you remember, he finally said, the year I stopped visiting? I remember the day, I said. I remember every day after it too. There was an accident, he said. Before that. A woman. On Route 4. I already had the clipping memorized. I didn't say so. I was driving, he said. I panicked. I didn't stop. I told myself I'd go to the police in the morning, and then it was 2 days, and then it was 2 weeks, and then I didn't know how to undo it anymore. So I just kept living like it never happened. And every time I looked at you, I felt like you could see straight through me. So I stopped looking. That's why you stayed away, I said. Not because you were busy. Because you couldn't stand to be looked at. He nodded, and for the first time since he was maybe 9 years old, I watched my son cry in front of me. There's more, he said. The woman, Grace, she survived. She's been trying to find the driver for over a decade. Not for revenge. She has kids now. Medical bills that never stopped. Her lawyer's been building a case, and last month they got a partial plate number off a traffic camera nobody had pulled before. It's going to lead back to me, Dad. Maybe in weeks. Maybe sooner. And you came here, I said slowly, to ask me to do what, exactly? He looked up at me, and for a second I saw the boy again, the one who used to hide broken things behind the shed and hope I wouldn't notice. I came to ask you to tell them you don't know anything, he said. That we haven't spoken. That there's nothing here. I sat with that for a long moment. 10 years of silence, and this was what had finally brought him back, not me, not the man who waited in room 114 for a phone call that never came, but the fear of what I might say to someone else. Renee came to see me, I said. Years ago. She said you loved me and hated yourself, and she didn't know how to fix either one. I think I finally understand what she meant. He didn't answer that. I'm not going to lie for you, I said. I lied for no one in 81 years, and I'm not about to start now, even for you. Especially not for you. Dad, but I'll tell you what I will do, I said. I'll sit next to you when you tell them the truth yourself. That's the only version of this where you get to stop running. He didn't decide that day. He came back 3 more times that month, and each time I could see him getting smaller under the weight of it, and each time I told him the same thing. On the 4th visit, he brought Renee, and their daughter, 16 now, nearly grown, with his same stubborn jaw, and he told them everything in the common room where Walter and I used to eat dry turkey on Thanksgiving. His daughter didn't speak to him for a week. Renee stayed that he turned himself in on a Tuesday. I know because he called me that morning, and for the first time in 10 years, he didn't need to ask me for anything. He just wanted me to know he wasn't going to run this time. Grace Halloran, it turned out, didn't want him buried under the system for the rest of his life. She wanted an apology that had taken 12 years to arrive, and restitution for medical bills that never stopped, and she got both. He served time, not as long as it could have been, but long enough to mean something. He writes me every week now. Sometimes I write back the same day. Sometimes I let him wait a little, the way I had to learn to wait. He visits when he can, which these days, is more often than not that I think about the suitcase sometimes. How it sat zipped in that hallway for 10 years while I waited for a call that was never going to come the way I imagined it. I understand now he wasn't hiding from me. He was hiding from what I might see in his face if he ever let me look at him too closely. That I don't know if 10 years was too long to wait for someone to stop running from themselves. I only know I'm glad I was still here when he finally did. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever waited on someone who wasn't ready to come back, stay a while longer. Tell me in the comments if you've ever forgiven someone it took you years to understand. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. There are more doors like room 114, and more people still waiting behind them.